trying to outnumber you guys. So some of the things that this neighborhood ownership model involves in other neighborhoods are citizen patrol, which I know is something that's getting a lot of discussion right now nationally. And I want to make clear that the citizens patrol that go on in the city of St. Louis could not be more different than what you read about in Florida. They're citizens who aren't armed. You know, that's a condition of them participating, that they're not armed. All they are is additional eyes and ears for the police. They're highly trained. There's a background investigation on everybody who participates. And their total goal is, when they notice something, to report it to the police and kind of exponentially leverage the presence of the police and law enforcement in the neighborhoods. Other components that I've seen of this neighborhood ownership model that are really effective have more to do with the court system where I function, and that is neighborhood impact. We have organized groups of citizens that come down to court, and when there's a sentencing from a particular neighborhood, the judges want to hear from the citizens. They want to hear from the people that live in that neighborhood. They want to know how that impacts them. You know, I always tell the story that, you know, 9 times out of 10 when you watch a sentencing in the city of St. Louis, and Neil will tell you that this is true, like if a guy's getting sentenced for burglary or car clodding or something like that, when it's sentencing day and the judge is deciding his fate, he does not look like he did that night he broke into your house. He's gotten a haircut, he's wearing a suit and tie. His mother is there in the front row. She's got Kleenex because she's dabbing her eyes. If he has any children, they're there. You know, everybody's there to create this impression in the judge's mind about this poor guy, let's give him another chance. And typically it's a guy with a lot of priors. And on the other side, if we don't have input from the community, it's just the prosecutor. And the prosecutor is there on every case, day in and day out. The judge really pays more attention to people from the community. So if you can write a letter, or we have instances where people come down to court, it's tremendously effective. It takes time. I wish I could tell you that the justice system and the court system was the most efficient thing in the world, but I think we all know it isn't. But it is very effective when we get the viewpoint of the community in there, and the judges will tell you that they do want to hear it. I'll tell you just a real quick story where I saw this recently. There was a rash of air conditioner thefts last summer up in the O'Fallon neighborhood, I believe. And they were taking the air conditioners from elderly people. It was like, if you recall last summer, it was well over 100 degrees. It was super, super hot. And taking the air conditioning from an elderly person who is economically challenged in that kind of heat is really a life-threatening thing to do to somebody. And so they finally caught a guy who had stole this elderly lady's air conditioner, and his attorney wanted a bond reduction for him. He was being held on bond, and his attorney wanted him to be let loose on a signature or something. And so this neighborhood group got together, and they were outraged that somebody was thinking about letting this guy out on bond. And they came down with this little old lady who was the victim, but she also had her buddies in this neighborhood group come down. And they all wore yellow shirts. So you could see them sitting there in the courtroom, this block of residents wearing yellow shirts. And she came up and talked to the judge, but the rest of them didn't have to say anything. They were just there with the yellow shirts on. And she found the courage from the support of her neighbors to come up and tell the judge about how scary it was for her not to have air conditioning, and how she worried what was she going to do in her brick house when it was 100 degrees. And she finally, through her church, was able to get some money to put in some window units. And she explained all this to the judge with the support of her community members. And the judge not only didn't reduce that guy's bond, the judge tripled that guy's bond. And it was fun for me to sit there and watch the reaction, because it wasn't just this guy. It was all the other guys that were waiting on their bond hearing. You could see them whispering back and forth and like, what was that, O'Fallon neighborhood? Okay, we're staying out of O'Fallon neighborhood. I don't want these yellow shirt people to come after me, you know. It sends a message that you are not interested in having that kind of crime in your neighborhood, that you as a community reject that when you show up in court and make your views known like that. And when you support victims. Those 60% of the cases that we couldn't prosecute because the victims wouldn't come forward, I wonder how many of those would have come forward if they would have had the support, the organized support of their neighbors. Probably quite a few, and that allows us to hold more criminals accountable. One other thing, and I don't know, Jim, if you guys use neighborhood orders of protection.
We're starting to get that off the ground, yes.
Yeah, this is another area where people, ordinary citizens in a community, can really flex their muscles and show that they are just not going to have crime in their neighborhoods. I get very frustrated, as I'm sure all of you do, with people who come in from outside the neighborhood and commit crimes and then go back to wherever, you know, it's like they're commuting to work. They come in and do their crimes and then leave. A neighborhood order of protection is a way that you can get a judge to sign a court order as a condition of someone getting out on bond or as a condition of somebody being put on probation that orders them to stay out of your neighborhood. As, you know, obviously they don't live in your neighborhood if they have such an order. And what that does is it puts people on notice that they have to stay out of your neighborhood. If they're picked up by the police or security officers, that'll be in the computer. When they run them, they see there's a stay-away order. They're not supposed to be there. That's a whole new violation. If they're out on probation, a report gets on their probation officer's desk, you know, shortly thereafter as a result of that. And we've seen people who have defied those orders, been arrested, had their probation revoked, had their bond revoked. And what I love the most about it, again, it's the neighbors speaking and saying, this is not okay with us. This is not going to be a norm in our neighborhood that we allow this. And it sends a powerful message. So those are some of the strategies that we've been seeing work in the St. Louis area. The thing is, it takes effort on the part of the citizens. So I hope that you guys are interested in doing that. I suspect that you are. You wouldn't be at a meeting like this, but I hope you can talk it up with your other residents because it really does make a difference. I've been doing this for a long time. I am seasoned. And this is the most effective crime-fighting strategy that I have seen in my 18 years as a prosecutor. So, does anybody have any questions for me? Want me to tell more stories about Jim White?
I don't have a question, but I do have an observation for you. I do the newsstand over here in Maryland and Euclid. One of the things I've been seeing here lately with some of the crimes that had been occurring in our section up here, and I mean it's been toned down big time. But the individuals who are wanting to commit crimes have been using spotters. They would have somebody sitting off to the distance, looking for the police to come through, do a phone call, and the bad guys go away. Even after they commit the crime. That's something that's got to be looked into as well.
Yeah, absolutely. They put some thought into it. And that's another thing that I think makes the citizens' patrols more effective. I mean, in some areas of the country, when they go out on citizen patrol, they wear hats or they have a sticker on their car. I don't endorse that. I think you should be completely nondescript and just use your, powers of observation, and then you can phone stuff in. And part of the training for citizen patrol is being able to give a proper description of all of that stuff and exactly describing what you see. And so then when the police get that call, they can go right there and, you're their eyes and ears. It works beautifully.
I've done that numerous times.
Yeah. So we have to be on our toes with these guys. They do have their strategies, these criminals, and in order to disrupt them, you have to be actively on your toes. Anybody else? Questions, comments? Yes, sir.
What was that 60% stat?
Of the cases that were brought to us by the police last